This morning we are continuing this journey. We are concluding our journey with Saul, the first king of Israel, the story of this tragic hero within the Old Testament. Last week, to catch us up, we saw Saul now tormented by this evil spirit as he has experienced the rejection of God and now God's appointment to David as king of Israel. Saul is in this terrible moment. He's afflicted. David amazingly is able to play music to ease his affliction. From there, that moment of intimacy, if you will, comes great conflict between Saul and David. David's fortunes rise as this civil war, if you will, escalates and unfolds. We come to this moment here in our reading this morning with Saul in the greatest of distress. The tragedy of his reign is about to be fully undone. The fall of Saul is what we shall hear of this morning, and this moment in which the tragedy of this person is fully revealed. So let us hear now our reading from the first book of Samuel. Saul now disguised himself and put on other clothes and went to a place where a medium, or you might say where a witch would be found. And he went there with 2 men with him. Then he came to the woman by night, and he said, "Consult a spirit for me, and bring up for me the one whom I name for you." The woman said to him, surely you know what Saul has done, how he has cut off the mediums and the wizards from the land. Why then are you laying a snare for my life to bring about my death? But Saul swore to her by the Lord, "As the Lord lives, no punishment shall come upon you for this thing." Then the woman said, "Whom shall I bring up for you?" He answered, "Bring up Samuel for me." For Samuel at this point had passed away, the prophet Samuel. When the woman saw Samuel, she cried out with a loud voice, and the woman said to Saul, "Why have you deceived me? You are Saul." The king said to her, "Have no fear. What do you see?" The woman said to Saul, "I see a divine being coming up out of the ground." And Saul said to her, "What is his appearance?" She said, "An old man is coming up. He is wrapped in a robe." So Saul knew that it was Samuel, and he bowed with his face to the ground and did obeisance. Then Samuel said to Saul, "Why have you disturbed me by bringing me up?" Saul answered, "I am in great distress, for the Philistines are warring against me, and God has turned away from me and answers me no more, either by prophets or by dreams. So I have summoned you to tell me what I should do." Samuel said, "Why then do you ask me, since the Lord has turned from you and become your enemy? The Lord has done to you just as he spoke by me. For the Lord has torn the kingdom out of your hand and given it to your neighbor David. Because you did not obey the voice of the Lord and did not carry out his fierce wrath against Amalek, therefore the Lord has done this thing to you today. Moreover, the Lord will give Israel along with you into the hands of the Philistines, and tomorrow you and your sons shall be with me. The Lord will also give the army of Israel into the hands of the Philistines." Immediately Saul fell full length on the ground, filled with fear because of the words of Samuel. I'd like to ask you to take a moment to think about where you are now and where you would like to be. Take a moment. Take a moment to think about that. Call to mind right now, where are you? Where are you in your journey? And where would you like to be? In that moment in which we are considering this, this present moment, it is a gap. It is a gap between now, here, where we are, and the future, where we would want to be. That gap, that moment in between, is of critical importance within our lives. That gap can be filled with a variety of emotions. We can be filled with excitement, anticipation, as we consider where I am now and where I want to be. Maybe there is something unfolding that makes this present moment one of excitement. But there is another emotion, there is another experience that we might have as we ask that question. Where do I want to be? As I stand in that gap. And that emotion can be one of distress, one of anxiety, one of deep concern. That gap can be a moment of crisis. We have the expression, one's back is against the wall. Or we sometimes say, I'm cornered and I don't know what to do. Where do I want to be when the gap is painful? Where do I want to be when that moment, that gap, fills me with fear or holds me in the deep grip of a depression? Or when that gap feels like a moment of hopelessness, where I am now and where I want to be. That gap is something that we often jump. It's something that we often leap over, because standing in that moment can truly be painful. But it is for us to pay attention, to dwell within that gap, to dwell within that space between the present and the future. Saul, at this moment in his life, was standing in a particular kind of gap. Where was Saul at the time of this reading? Things were slipping away from him. He was experiencing the judgment of God. He was experiencing the rise of David. That moment for Saul was one of great distress. We would say his back was against the wall. He was cornered. In that moment, where did he want to be? We see in this reading that he wanted to experience once again the favor of God. Once again, he wanted things to not be falling apart, but rather to be peaceful and with harmony. So he's standing in that moment, a moment of distress, a moment of agony, a painful moment. And so what does he do? What does he do? He wants to move from that painful moment, that painful gap, to that place where he would like to be, where all things are made right. But he doesn't know what to do. He doesn't know how to get there. And he does, and perhaps makes, the worst mistake of his life. He goes and he consults this medium, a person who can see spirits, a person who can bring spirits up from the dead, if you will. Saul is so desperate. He's in such distress. He's standing in that painful gap. and he is trying to find an answer. And so he goes to this medium. He can't bear the gap any longer. He goes to the medium, the worst possible choice that he could make, and he asks the medium, now he's disguised. He doesn't want her to know that this is the king. He goes to the medium and says, can you bring up a spirit for me? And who would that be? Samuel, the prophet, the one who guided Saul, the one who gave him this instruction. Because he felt in that moment of desperation, when he didn't know what to do, let's get Samuel. If I can bring Samuel into this present moment, surely he will help me move from where I am to where I want to be. It was a desperate move. Well, the medium brings up Samuel. How does Samuel react to being called forth from the dead? He's angry. He says to Saul, why have you brought me up? Why have you called me up? We have that sense that Samuel was at peace with God. Samuel had passed away, and imagine he was in heaven. But now, this medium brings him back. And Saul says in that moment of distress, Samuel, I don't know what to do. I'm stuck. I'm lost. God has turned his face from me, and I do not know what to do, and so I've called for you, because I think you can help me. But Samuel says to him, what can I do? What can I do? He says, you have sinned against God, because Saul didn't follow all of the commandments. Remember, Saul made a sacrifice when he was impatient, when Samuel didn't seem to arrive after a week's worth of waiting. Saul made a sacrifice himself. Bad, terrible choice. And here there's a reference to Amalek. Saul was given this command to wipe out the whole army and just wipe everybody out. Everybody. But Saul couldn't do it. He didn't want to wipe out the civilians. He didn't want to wipe out the civilians. This is why he's said a tragic hero. But he broke that commandment. So Saul, in this moment of great tragedy, he wants to be restored. But it's not going to happen. David has been raised up, and Saul, our poor, tragic hero, is tumbling down. Where he wants to be, it's not going to happen for him, but rather he's told the next day he and his sons will die. Samuel says, the next day you're going to join me. Now, it's easy when we see people making decisions, when they're in the pain of that gap, it's easy to pass judgment on them. It's easy to say, wow, Saul, what a fool. What a fool. Why did he go to the medium? It's so easy to say that. It's so easy to say that because perhaps we do not appreciate the pain, the distress of one who is standing in that moment. I met a long time ago a young man who came into the church from the street, and he suffered from a terrible drug addiction. He described his life to me in a very, very similar way. Where was he? He described his moment. He was in pain. He was suffering. Where did he want to be? He wanted to feel at peace. He wanted to feel his life restored. But the pain was so great in that moment, in that gap between where he was and where he wanted to be. He tried to ease that pain. And so he tried to use, or he did use, drugs to try to ease that pain. It didn't bring him to where he wanted to be. But the pain was so great His back was against the wall, and in fact, like Saul, he made a choice that was tragic. Now, it's so easy when we see people in that state of life. It's so easy to say, wow, what a terrible, ridiculous person, a drug addict. Wow, I can't believe they would do that. I can't believe they would make that choice. Just like people would say about Saul, wow, what a loser. He went to a medium. But we don't know what it is like, and we pass judgment so quickly. Let's bring it back to us. Let's bring it back to ourselves. Those are two very, very emphatic, dramatic examples. But let's bring it back to ourselves. Where are we? Take a moment, not just now, but kind of take stock. Where am I? Where do I want to be? Pay attention to this gap in which we are standing. We're going to be filled within our lives with all kinds of emotions. Like I said, we might be excited. Where I am now, where I'm about to be, oh, it may be one of great accomplishment. And we feel in that in-between moment the excitement as things are unfolding. But all at the very same time, we might feel like Saul, that our back is against the wall, and that we are distressed. We are feeling anxious. We may be gripped by uncertainty and depression in that present moment, in that gap. That is the space to which we need to be attentive and to which we need to receive care. Poor Saul, he was all alone. He was all alone. There was really no one to stand in that gap with him. He thought Samuel might be the one to come and stand at his side, but it wasn't going to be Samuel. Sometimes in moments of great distress, in that gap, we can feel so very alone. That is the moment. That is the moment that before we make a decision, we invite someone into that gap with us. That takes humility. That makes us vulnerable. But that is the moment, because distress and anxiety and depression and uncertainty make us isolated, and we're standing there stuck and in pain. That is the moment to invite someone, to bring someone into it with you, so that you might receive care, so that you might receive comfort and even guidance, so that you are not alone in moving from the present to the future. We invite someone into that gap with us. Similarly, when we see someone in that gap, and when we see them gripped with distress or uncertainty, similarly, it is for us to gently, carefully, mercifully enter that gap, enter that distress, and stand with that person. How different it might have been for Saul if he had someone in that moment, if he had someone who would stand with him. He hoped it would be Samuel, but that was not to be. How different it might have been for Saul. How different it might have been for the young man who I met if there was someone in his life up until that moment who stood with him. How different it would be. You know what we call this, standing next to someone in that gap? It's a beautiful word. We might call it ministry. We might call it Ministry in that we are standing with someone else. Standing in that gap. If Saul had that person, things might have been different. When we feel our back is against the wall and we are in agony, things can be different. Things can be transformed. But we need to pay attention. We need to really pay attention to where we are now, to where we want to be, and to be present to the feeling of this moment. It's no good if we just jump. We just say, okay, this is where I want to be, and I'm going to make a really quick decision. It's no good. Haste makes waste. It's no good if we do that, really, truly, in the long run. We need to be attentive to what we are feeling. We need to be attentive to what is happening right now. And then, in those moments of discernment, in those moments in which someone comes and stands at our side, our desperation can be transformed into anticipation. Our sense of hopelessness can be transformed into excitement. Our sense of isolation can be transformed into experience of fellowship. This moment matters so very much. For Saul, he knew it. He knew this moment was crucial. He knew it was so important. But the tragedy is there was no one at his side. It's a cautionary tale. We don't judge Saul for making the wrong decision. We look at Saul with compassion. We don't judge one another for these kinds of decisions. We look with compassion, and we stand arm in arm. For just as we, at the beginning of our service, just as we share celebrations, so also do we share our pain. That is what makes us a fellowship. That is what makes us the body of Christ. That is what makes us sisters and brothers. How desperately do we need to be at our side. So we say goodbye to Saul on this Sunday morning. We say goodbye to Saul, and we have seen a man with so many good qualities. But we see a man in which there is this tragic divide within him. We can say goodbye to Saul with appreciation for him. He shows us so much. We can say goodbye to Saul with compassion for him, because he stood in the depths of desperation. We say goodbye to Saul, and we say hello to one another, maybe for the very first time, in a new way. Goodbye and hello. You're not alone. I stand with you in the gap of this moment. Amen.